didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
I do. Here you are, sir.
Delicious. And by the way, Lane, I see from your book that on Thursday night when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir.
Oh?
I have often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I am much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir, it is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure.
Oh, excuse me, sir.
Of course. Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
A Mr. Ernest Worthing, sir.
How are you, my dear Ernest?
Hello.
What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure.
Uh-huh.
What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
Oh, how immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not, Ernest?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well. But I am afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches.
Well,
they are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
You have been eating them all the time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
Well, my dear fellow, you need not eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean?
Lane.
What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily?
Lane?
I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Sir?
Lane, would you bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here?
Right away, sir.
Do you mean to say that you have had my cigarette case all the time?
Apparently not. When I took a look at the inscription inside, I found the thing wasn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you had no right whatsoever to read what was written inside.
More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
Here you are, sir.
Thank you, Lane.
Of course, sir.
This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
your aunt.
Yes, a charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That's a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, just give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle? I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It is Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I've ever saw in my life. It's on your card. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing B. for the Albany.
Well,
I'll keep this as proof that your name is Ernest, if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolen, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town, and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Now go on, tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I am quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Not until you give me back my cigarette case.
Oh, here.
Thank you very much.
Now, produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about the explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motive of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited.
Yeah.
I may tell you candidly that it is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburyed all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough.
Oh?
When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so.
Really?
And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a Bunburyist. You are the most advanced Bunburyist I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest, in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose.
I see.
Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I have been really engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You are absurdly careless about sending out invitations. It is very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. What? The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. It looks so bad. It is simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I'm not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I am going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So, I am going to get rid of Ernest. And I strongly advise you to do the same with with your invalid friend, who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, and she is the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Oh, then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none. Ugh, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Ugh.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Ah.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. Mwah. Mwah. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Oh, and dear me, Gwendolen, you are looking smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It will leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we were a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Horbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger.
You don't say.
And now, I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here next to me, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
Well, there it is. That will be all. Thank you, Lane.
Of course, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Horbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour, of what cause I, of course, cannot say.
Here you are.
Thank you, dear boy. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar.
Yeah.
She's such a nice woman, and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight, after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I have just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again.
Oh?
They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury, from me, to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. But I'll run over the music program I've drawn out, if you will kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful, after a few expurgations. Gwendolen, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
This way, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, dear boy.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I've ever met since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite well aware of the fact, and I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you've always had an irresistible fascination.
Oh?
Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals, and my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
That is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name.
Well,
it has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Really, Gwendolen, I must say that I think there are lots of much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? No, there is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John, and I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once.
What?
I mean, we must get married at once.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't even proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity, and to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolen.
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't get down on one knee and say it.
Oh, well, Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling.
Gwendolen.
How long you've been about it. I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so.
Mr. Worthing!
Lady Bracknell.
Rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come to a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she should be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolen!
Yes, Mamma.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men.
Oh?
However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I am glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I've always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England, at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory.
I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe.
A country house? How many bedrooms?
Uh.
Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope.
Well, yes.
A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature, like Gwendolen, could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house on Belgrave Square.
Nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
Oh, the unfashionable side. I thought there was something. Now, to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth.
I'm afraid I really don't know.
Oh?
The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be nearer to the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket to the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag, a somewhat large black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James, or Thomas, Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom? At Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life.
Well,
As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
may I ask you then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say that I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolen's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce, at any rate, one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good afternoon, Mr. Worthing.
Good afternoon.
For
Goodness sake, Algy, don't sing that ghastly tune. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolen refused you?
As far as Gwendolen is concerned, we are engaged.
Uh-huh.
Her mother, however, is another matter.
Oh?
Lady Bracknell is perfectly unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. Upon my word. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolen becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algy?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his. By the way, did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells a sweet, refined girl.
Yeah.
Before the end of the week, I shall have got rid of my profligate brother. I'll say Ernest died in Paris of apoplexy.
Uh-huh.
Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's a sort of thing that runs in families. You had much better say, a severe chill.
Very well then, my poor brother Ernest will be carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't she feel his loss a good deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She's got a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
Oh, I would rather like to meet Cecily.
I will take very good care you never do. She is excessively pretty and is only just 18.
Really? Have you told Gwendolen yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one mustn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolen are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that a half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they have called each other a lot of other things first.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolen, upon my word.
Algy, kindly turn your back. I've something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolen, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude towards life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
You're right.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married.
What?
From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall, but although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolen.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deeper fibres of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me.
Well.
Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
Hertfordshire. Got it.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require some serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Oh, good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
Oh, all right. Lane?
You will let me see you to your carriage, my own darling?
Certainly.
Sir?
Lane, I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Very good, sir.
After you,
Oh.
Gwendolen.
Thank you.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Right away, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday.
Here you are, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Of course.
You can put up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Leave it to me, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Oh, Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
I'm a little anxious about poor Bunbury, that is all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They are the only things that are never serious.
Oh, that's nonsense, Algy. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Oh.
Cecily!
Oh, I'm over here, watering the flowers.
Surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Moulton's duty than yours.
Yes, Miss Prism.
Especially at a moment when intellectual pleasures await you.
Oh?
Your German grammar is on the table.
Oh.
Pray open it at page 15. We will repeat yesterday's lesson.
But I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes he is so serious I think he cannot be quite well.
Cecily, I am surprised at you.
Oh.
Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in his conversation.
True.
And you must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man,
his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes.
What?
We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism.
Influence?
I am sure you certainly would.
Me?
You know German and geology and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I am not sure that I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favor of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so let him reap. Oh, you must put away your diary, Cecily. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cecily, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles the things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cecily. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism?
Mm-hmm.
How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so, but it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no.
Oh.
The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned.
Abandoned?
I use the word in the sense of lost or mislaid.
Oh.
To your work, child, these speculations are profitless.
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, oh, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning? Miss Prism, you are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache.
What?
I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
Cecily, I have not mentioned anything about a headache.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that, but I felt instinctively that you had a headache.
Oh.
Indeed, I was thinking about that and not my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cecily, you are not inattentive.
Oh, I am afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees.
Indeed.
Oh.
Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment, as by all accounts, that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be.
Yes.
But I must not disturb Egeria and her pupil any longer.
Egeria? My name is Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion, merely, drawn from the pagan authors.
Oh.
Well, I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Doctor, I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools, and back.
That would be delightful. Cecily.
Oh.
You will read your political economy in my absence.
Ugh.
The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational.
Let us away, Miss Prism.
Oh, horrid political economy. Horrid geography. Horrid German.
Excuse me, miss.
What is it, madam?
A Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station.
What?
He has brought his luggage with him.
His luggage?
Here is his calling card, miss.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Madam, did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here.
Right away, miss.
Oh, and I suppose you better see about a room for him.
I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Thank you, madam.
My pleasure, miss.
I have never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I am so afraid he will look just like everyone else.
How do you do?
Oh, he does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I am more than usually tall for my age.
Is that so?
But I am your cousin Cecily. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother, my cousin Ernest, my wicked cousin Ernest.
No, I am not really wicked at all, Cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I am wicked.
If you are not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, of course. I have been rather reckless.
I am glad to hear it.
In fact, now that you mention the subject, I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I am sure it must have been very pleasant.
That is why I want you to reform me. You might make that your mission, if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That is because I am hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A Marichal Neal?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Well, then Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says all good looks are a snare.
They are a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man.
Oh?
I shouldn't know what to talk to him about. Oh, they're back already. Come with me, Cousin Ernest.
Good idea.
You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married.
Well,
A misanthrope I can understand, a womanthrope never. You do not seem to realize, dear doctor, that by persistently remaining single, a man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
but is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive except to his wife.
And often, I've been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be depended on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women are green. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cecily?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing!
Mr. Worthing?
Oh, this is indeed a surprise. We did not look for you till Monday afternoon.
I have returned sooner than I expected.
Indeed.
Dr. Chasuble, I hope you are well.
I trust the scarf of woe you're wearing does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful debts and extravagance?
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead!
Your brother, Ernest, dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust he will profit by it.
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence.
Thank you.
You have at least the consolation of knowing that you were always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No. He died abroad, in Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager of the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to draughts. Will the interment take place here?
No, he seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
I fear that hardly points to any very serious state of mind at the last.
Indeed.
You would, no doubt, wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday?
Well...
My sermon on the meaning of the man and the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion, joyful or, as in the present case, distressing.
But
I have preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation and festal days.
That reminds me. You mentioned christenings, Dr. Chasuble. I would like to be christened myself this afternoon, if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
Well, at what hour would you wish this ceremony performed?
Would 5:30 do?
Perfectly.
Uncle Jack! Oh, I am pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you've got on.
Cecily!
Do go and change them.
My child.
What is the matter, Uncle Jack?
I-
Do look happy. You look as if you've had a toothache.
Well-
And I've got such a surprise for you.
Oh.
Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother!
My who?
Your brother Ernest! He arrived about a half an hour ago.
What nonsense! I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
Oh, Mr. Worthing, these are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me peculiarly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room? I don't know what it all means. I think it is perfectly absurd.
Brother John!
Good heavens!